Recording in progress.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Sha'akol Niyeh B'dvarai. Okay, good morning, good Chodesh to everybody. Thank you so much for joining as we continue our journey B'siyata Deshmaya of Likutei Moharan. Today's shir is sponsored by Yitzchak Gedalyah ben Ilanit for the zechus of Menashe Gavriel ben Chava and Avraham Shlomo ben Ilanit and by Zev Klein nishmas, his parents Revka b'riynel bas Simcha and Yaakov ben Yeshעיהו, also for shidduchim for Yehudis Adina bas Elisheva Rochel, Dovid ben Fayga Kayla, Yonatan Shimon ben Adasa Ronit, Netanel ben Michal Mahnaz, interesting name, Dovid ben Yael and Noach Avraham ben Sarah Rochel, Zev ben Rivka, bryndel, and all of Klal Yisrael, also dedicated as a zechus for the continued refuah Shlomo of Chaim Yehoshua ben Chaya Miriam. We should only hear good news. Have you heard that name before? Mahnaz? Yeah. Mahnaz. So they wrote, that's a Sephardi name. Interesting. Okay, amazing. Let's jump in. B'siyata Deshmaya to Torah Mem Zayin. And we are going to hopefully finish the Torah today. We continue with Reb Nassan's explication of the teaching that the Rebbe revealed in his notes, which was the first half of the Torah, and we jump back into, I believe, the paragraph Va'al Zeh. Yeah. Okay, so we're on page Nunvav with the paragraph Va'al Zeh in the first column, and just a tiny background again of what Reb Nassan was immediately speaking about. He was speaking about how the energy of Eretz Yisrael is reflective of the energy of Tefillin, which is the energy of Yaakov Avinu, because Yaakov is associated with the midah of Tiferes, and Pe'er is the Tefillin, Pe'ercha Chavoy Shalecha, and that is the aspect of Emes, which saturates the land of Eretz Yisrael to such an extent that the eating in Eretz Yisrael is, at least ideally, supposed to be reflective of an energy of transparency, essentiality, Eretz Eicheles, where the eating is Yoshveha, is filled with the energy of Yaakov Avinu, of Vayeshev Yaakov, right? And we learned that this is the aspect of Eretz Hashaloi b'miskenas toichav alechem, which I think we're going to get to in the next paragraph. But a land where the eating is an eating of shviras taivas achila, right? Where, like we learned over here, it just means shalo le'echal harbe. Like Reb Nassan says, just to eat little, rak mikezayis va'ad kebeya, and that's a huge avodah that a person needs to do. It's a real effort, right, in this world to withhold ourselves and to really be conscious of this aspect of our consumption. Okay, and that was the remez of Naftali Ayla Shlucha, Hanoisin Imrei Shafer. So we said Hanoisin Imrei Shafer is Reshet Tevis Isha. Hanoisin Imrei Shafer, and that's the pasuk Re'ei Chaim Im Ha'isha. Chaim was tefillin, which is associated with life, which we learned from two separate psukim. Chayecha Tzluim was a reference to tefillin, as well as Hashem Aleihem Yichyu. So Chiyas, life, was associated with tefillin. And that's the aspect of Re'ei Chaim Im Ha'isha. So Isha, Hanoisin Imrei Shefer, is a reference to tefillin. And we said even more specifically, Hanoisin Imrei Shefer is the light of tefillin, the way that Reb Nassan frames it, which is the energy of Tiferes, Kudsha B'richu, is the mashpia, right? Is Hanoisin Imrei Shefer. Imrei is Dibur, Dibur is Malchus, that's the Shechina, right? So Hanoisin Imrei Shefer. The tefillin, which is Re'ei Chaim Im Ha'isha, is what's mashpia. The Mechina of Yaakov Avinu, Emes, Kudsha B'richu, it's just code, right? Is mashpia shefa to Imrei, to the aspect of Dibur, of Malchus, and that's why it begins with Naftali Ayla Shulcha, which is itself a reference, like Chazal tell us, to the produce of Eretz Yisrael. But of course, Naftali is Oisius Tefillin, and as one of our very, very dear Chabura members, Yoni Shine, Zohar Yehuda Yona, who we miss very terribly, posted yesterday on the Likutei Moharan discussion group, he reminded us that the month of Adar, as all the 12 months are associated with the Shvatim, is the month of Naftali. So what an incredible thing that on Rosh Chodesh Adar, we're sitting here learning about Naftali, which is the light of Tefillin, and the light of Emes, and the light of Yaakov Avinu, Shoshanas Yaakov, Tzalav Samecha. Incredible. All about Tefillin. Amazing. Amazing connections. What are you learning, Menachas? Okay, let's jump back in. Says Reb Nosson, he carries on with the Ramazim. And he says, Re'eh Chayim im Isha. See Chayim im Isha. So we just spoke this out outside. Now we learned it inside. Ki Isha. The word Isha is Rashi Tevis Hanoisein Imrei Shafer. The one who sends forth beautiful sayings. Hanoisein Imrei Shafer. Rashi Tevis Isha. Va'ainu Re'eh Chayim. Ki tefillin nikraim chayim. It says see life because tefillin are called life. Like we said from the two psukim, Hashem aleichem yichyu v'darshu al tefillin. And Chazal say that this is a reference to the tefillin that was upon him. Hashem aleihem yichyu, and we put tefillin upon ourselves. Ki b'tefillin emar b'ro kol amei haaretz ki shem Hashem nikra. Alecha. About tefillin it says that all the Amei Haaretz shall see, and we learned this in a previous Torah, that the Shem Hashem Nikra Alecha. So again, that word Alecha refers to putting something on ourselves, and that's a reference to tefillin. So that's the pasuk Hashem Aleihem Yichyu. That word also connotes the placing of something upon our heads. Ki b'tefillin emar v'ro kol amei haaretz ki Shem Hashem Nikra Alecha v'hainu re'eh chayim shehiyat tefillin im isha. Seeing life, which is a reference to tefillin, is going to be bound up with the concept of Isha, which is Rashi Tevis Hanoisin Imrei Shafer, again a reference to tefillin, and specifically the light of tefillin, Yaakov Avinu, in its relationship with the light of Malchus Lemekabel, the Shechina, which is Eretz Yisrael, Shu Gamkin B'chinas Tefillin, which Hanoisin Imrei Shafer, like we said, is also a reference to tefillin. V'zehu, and that's pshat in the pasuk of the Barim, Eretz Yisrael is a land where bread is eaten, but not out of poverty. Kayla, meaning to say Eretz Sheb'chinas Emes, Eretz, which is Malchus, which is saturated with the light of Yaakov Avinu, right, with the light of Emes, and then the individual who is experiencing this activation of Yichud Kutchabrichu Shchinte within himself or herself is the aspect of Ha'aras Panim, the aspect of illumination, and therefore a person who is already filled with illumination doesn't feel the need to go and find tafnukim. Right, which is, like we said, that word we had a hard time finding a translation for, that finicky sense, like we said, is connected word, right? Fanuk, finicky, right? Tafnukim is this delicate nature that seeks pleasure. That's right. That seeks external stimulus because a person's already living with the Arapanim. That's the light of the Tam. That's the light of contentment. That's the light of Yishuv Das. That's the light of Menuchas HaNefesh. Such a person is centered. Such a person is saturated. Such a person is already an Ashir, because Ezu Ashir, like we learned, Hasameach B'chalkai. This, by the way, like we learned previously, is also an aspect of Yaakov Avinu, because of course Yaakov is a person who's first of all called Ishtam. Right, and that's not a coincidence that in the story of the Chacham and the Tam, right, the person who represents that life, like we described 2 days ago, I think, when we spoke about the experience of all the pleasures in the world, just in the simplest thing, that person is called a Tam. That's A. But B, Yaakov Avinu famously is the one who tells Esav, Yesh li kol. All right, I have everything that I could ever need. Did he mamish have everything in the world? Yaakov Avinu owned everything? No. But Yaakov Avinu said that, and meant that whatever he had was to him, he tasted the allness of reality, right? And that's also what we learned itself, an aspect of Yichud Kutchabrichu Shchinte, Shchinte being our experience of the limited world with its constrictions and limitations. That's the world that we live in. And a Yichud Kutchabrichu Shchinte is when I can access through the particular letters, right, through the particular confines and boundaries of what I have that I don't have what someone else has, but this is my life. Through that, I'm able to access the all, right? And that's the consciousness of the Tam, Yaakov Ishtam. That's the consciousness of Yaakov Avinu, the true Ashir, Havi Gvir La'achecha, right? The true Ashir, Yaakov Avinu is called an Ashir because he's Sameach B'chelkai, because he says Yesh li kol. So once Eretz Yisrael is lit up with the element of Emes, then it's a Bechina, it's an aspect of Ha'aras Panim. That whole experience is saturated with Ha'aras Panim. Everything is full of light. And that person no longer chooses these fleeting pleasures. The alkaid, and it is therefore that loy b'miskenus machmas dalus v'aniyas toichav alechem. Eretz Yisrael doesn't eat bread on account of poverty and paucity. V'loy sharmadanim, and chooses to eat bread and not any other pleasantries. That's not why people in Eretz Yisrael eat bread. Rather, it's because Eretz Yisrael is an aspect of emes, and once a person is lit up with the element of emes, that's an indicator that they are mufshat, that they are completely disconnected from the aspect of taivas achila, and therefore that person chooses simplicity. That person chooses to eat simply, to eat basic, without looking for extra pleasures. V'alkein, therefore, nikres Eretz Yisrael Eretz HaChayim. Okay, this is an additional aspect. Or maybe not. No, the Rebbe had brought this actually. Okay, this was what we already said. Eretz Yisrael is called Eretz HaChayim. But this is new. Ki hashpa'asa mebiras Yaakov. Because Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Malchus, has to be saturated with the spirit of Yaakov Avinu, Yaakov Tiferes, and the yichud between them, Shenemar Alav, about whom it says, Yaakov Avinu loy meis. Yaakov Avinu doesn't die. Because Yaakov Avinu is Tiferes. Tiferes is Pe'er. Pe'er is Tefillin. Tefillin is Chayim. Right? Hashem Aleichem Yichyu. Memela, it's all connected. Yaakov Avinu, who's the aspect of Tiferes, Pe'er, Tefillin, etc., Laimes. Because Yaakov Avinu is saturated with life. Because Yaakov Avinu is shining forth the energy of the sun, of Kucha Barichu, right, of the spiritual source. Memela, it's not an aspect of Misa. Ragleha Yardus Mavis. Malchus has an aspect of Misa, but Malchus, like I was writing yesterday because I was preparing the transcript for Torah Aleph, which is a really good review. I don't know if the Chava are getting them, but a lot of work goes into it. But it's a really good review. Even for myself, it's just beautiful. I go back to Torah Aleph, it's like, it's game over that first year. It's just like, it's mind-blowing. Mamish, to go back and to read. And so like we say in Torah Aleph, right? Malchus could be a Malchus de Kedusha, or it could be a Malchus de Sitracher. It could be a moon, a Malchus that's either reflecting the light of the sun. Everything goes back to that. The Rebbe literally lays out in the first Torah, which is why it's first, the whole foundation for everything else that he's going to discuss. It's remarkable. It's just loy dumya sihila. It's hard to put it into words. But the Rebbe over there says it can be a Malchus de Kedusha, or it can be a Malchus de Sitra Achra. Malchus is the place of potential death. Malchus is the place of potential life. What's it dependent on? Whether a person in Malchus, in the constriction and the confines of the limited physical world, is using that experience to discover the Chachmeilah, right? To discover the light of the sun. Then, and that's a world of Chain, and that's etc. If not, this world is a world of death. This world is a world of Esav, which we said then, I think, maybe at some point. I didn't see it in the first year, but I should have said, because it's true that while Yaakov Avinu loy meis, a fascinating thing, who in Torah Aleph was the contrast to Yaakov and his lifestyle, was Esav. What does it say about Esav? Hine anochi hoylech lamas. Right? Esav literally says, my whole life is death. Wherever I go, even when I'm hoylech, even when I'm not cold in the grave, right? As I progress and walk and travel, lamos. Esav is an energy of death. Because Esav is rooted in Malchus de Sitrachra, Ragleha Yardus Mavis. But Yaakov Avinu, who experiences on account of who he is, Yaakov Avinu Laimes, that Yaakov Avinu is the energy of Chayim, which is the energy of Tefillin, which is the energy of Emes, which is the energy of Kucha Barichu, Tiferes. Yaakov Avinu Laimes. Yaakov Avinu lives in this world with an aspect of the consciousness Yishli Kol, Havi Gavriel La'achecha, Ezu Ashir, Hasameach Bechelke. Okay, so all these things are connected. Therefore, Yaakov Avinu, who's connected to all of these concepts, because Yaakov Avinu is an aspect of Tefillin Shenekrem Chaim. We're on the top paragraph, you see? On Nunvav. Nimsad emerges that when a person is connected to this light of Emes, as I parnasa berevach, all the channels open, and then a person has parnasa berevach. A person has parnasa berevach. sometimes you see that the wealthiest people live the most minimally. It's true. There are people like this. Simple. You don't see very wealthy people who are obese. Maybe it used to be in the ancient days, the kings, it's not like that. Like I was just looking at a picture of Jared Kushner yesterday. The guy's the skinniest person ever, so he looks like he never ate something in his life. Right? He could afford whatever, but he's a healthy guy, right? Apparently, he looks super healthy, right? You think about these people, it's like you would assume they have so much money, like all they do is just stuff their faces the whole day, because why not? They don't, They don't. It's sort of lost on them, I guess. What a shame. No, on the contrary, that's the way it is. When a person is in a matziv of minimalism, paradoxically, because once a person has opened the channels of emes in their life, so then the hashpa is able to flow. And this is what the remez is. What the Rebbe brought, again, Rav Nosson just reorganizes the Torah so it flows more carefully. Right? Even just laha'ir, to point out that in Rabbi Nachman's shir notes, we wouldn't have necessarily understood the yichud kutchabrichu aspect of it, because he didn't set it up that way. Right? So there's Eretz Yisrael, there's emes, but it's not in a system. The way Rav Nosson writes it, okay, now I see the framework, right, that's being unfolded before me. So v'zeh remez, this is pshan in the pasuk, kushta koi, truth stands. What does this mean? Says Rabbi Nachman, Rabbi Seidus, Chana Baruch Shval pasuk, v'es kalayikum v'chulei, v'es kalayikum asher b'ragleihem. The pasuk that refers to Klal Yisrael and all of the property that they brought with them when they left Mitzrayim. Say Chazal, Zemamoina shal Adam shemamidai sayal raglav. Right? This is the money of an individual, a person's finances, that allow the person to stand up on their feet. A person goes bankrupt. It's called pashat regel. Right? Pashta regel means he got his legs kicked out under him. He loses what is able to support him, hold him up. So money is connected with feet, with standing. V'zeo, so that's the remez in the Gemara in Shabbos. Kushta, which means truth. Ha'oichiz b'midas emes azai koi. A person has kushta, has koi. Zemamai noishema midai al raglav. This is a reference to financial stability. Uparnasasa berevach. And this can open up the channel of parnasa in one's life. Ach, shikra, loikoi. But if a person's bound up with the world of sheker, then loikoi. Very simple. It's right there in the Gemara. Kiubas panim. Because that person closes up the channel. He lives in a world of malchus without being able to access through the limited realms of what he has, the infinite. Right? He severs the channel between kutchabrichu shchinte. And Memela is the bechin of Esav, hini anoichi halech lamos, as opposed to Yaakov, which is Yaakov Avinu loimes. Shebechinas emes. V'alkein, therefore, I'll call tzara shaloi tavai. That's why on every tzara that chas v'shalom shouldn't come upon Klal Yisrael, what happens? Koizerim tainus. The whole Masechas Tainus speaks about the different taniyos that would be arranged for the tzibor. Why? If Klal Yisrael is in a state of tsar, so then right now what they're experiencing is a blockage of the light for one way or another. Now again, let's remind ourselves, like we've learned previously, we still believe that blockage of the light is good, because Kolman the Avraham of it. Like I just gave him my zechus around Shir on Monday, which is really kedai to listen to. I don't think she's posted it yet, but it's super, super kedai. One of the most important shiurim in that series. I'll send the link, Blineder, when it's up. I'll send it to the Likutei Moharan group, because it's really, really important shiur to listen to, I think. But we speak about over there how when Chazal said Kol ma da Avraham Latava, that it didn't come with an asterisk saying chutz mi, it means kol. And it's a super lofty consciousness, has to be dealt with very sensitively, because we're human beings who feel pain, right, and experience sorrow and anger and so on and so forth. But this is what Chazal do say. And so even the experience of Astaras Panim, we believe is weiter for our good. However, there's always the niggling suspicion that sometimes, like Rav Hutner says, prayer is not to get you out of trouble, trouble is to get you into prayer. It's possible that the Astaras Panim is to compel us into tikkunim so that we can reawaken the Ha'aras Panim, right? Just because I'm feeling Astaras Panim now doesn't mean that I need to be feeling it in a minute from now, right? It means now I'm feeling it so it's good. Right? But obviously I have to do everything in my ability through my tikkunim, ishtadlos, gashmis, and ruchnius, especially as it relates to someone else's pain, to be able to improve the situation, without a question. So when a person is experiencing a tsar, keme'achar she'Yisrael nisunim b'tzara, they are abiding in a state of hastaras panim b'chinas dinim, which is an aspect of din, which is malchus, dina de malchus adina. Therefore, goyzer and tainus l'shaber tavis achila. First thing we do is everybody stop eating. Amazing thing, stop eating, and it goes to an extreme. Tainus doesn't just mean you're eating a little bit. Tainus, detox. Why? Because all of a sudden the channel's open, and you see that within ourselves. Right, even though the Nabi says Kiru Levavchem al Begdechem, the Gemara in Tainus, right? Fasting is not just the physical withholding from food, but on the contrary, the physical withholding from food has an incredible ability to open channels within the person to make them karov l'ruchnius. It does. It really, really does. And it's an amazing thing. Just think about it. One day. Think about how time flies. A week, a bunch of weeks, a month, a few months, a year, right? One day you stop from eating, your whole energy changes, right? Even half a day. Person does a half a fast. Tainus shais. Till chatzos. It does something to you. It does something to you, right? So here we're learning Al Pi Pnimius what it's doing. Because Al Pi Pnimius, Shviras Tavis Achila activates the Makar of Chaim, the Makar of Emes, Ha'aras Panim. And yet a person feels a little bit less Megusham. A person feels a little bit more elevated. And it isn't just a physical sensation. It's a spiritual sensation. It's an energetic sensation. And then there's the aspect of Ha'aras Panim, of Noise Panim, Shuhu Bechinas Hamtakas U'Bitol Adinim. And then all the din is nimtak, all the din is sweetened, kiniskala el, like we mentioned earlier, the chilay esapanim, right? How could a Kodesh Baruch Hu not be esapanim she'emedaktikim ad kazayis v'ad kebeya, like we learned over there, right? Which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying that even though generally Hashem is not going to be favorable toward one over another, however, Hashem is going to be esapanim when they are medaktik ad kazayis v'ad kebeya. Question?
Yeah. Is it going to explain the difference between the tikkun of eating a little bit, which is a positive in the eating a little bit, and the not eating at all?
So I think the not eating at all is like an extreme reboot. It's like a defibrillator, right? But that's not the normal.
A lot of minus of shaka.
What's that?
A lot of minus of shaka.
A lot of?
Like taking away.
Yes. Yeah. Meaning when Chayshal is mamish and exardin, tainus. Tainus means we're resetting the system. Then, once a person can get acclimated to that kind of a relationship with food, we're like, all right, I'm staying away from it altogether, then you bring it back in, obviously. A person can't fast constantly.
There's a hemshach from
of course.
Going into the right relationship with food.
It has to be, right? It has to be. Although, there were tzaddikim, like Rabbi Nachman himself, who used to fast all week, right? Called Avsaka. He used to fast all 7 days. And he did this many, many times throughout his life. So that's for tzaddikim. But regular people, right, like my humble self, and I imagine us in the room, need to eat and should work on eating a little bit. Okay, but that's what the tainus was like an extreme bittul of achila. And that is shaviras tavas achila. Again, not the ideal because we're humans who have to eat. But for that day, that's extreme bit of shviras tavas achila. It's not about the not eating, right? It's about the gvura of withholding, right? So extremely that b'meila means you don't end up eating. But again, it's not about not having food in the system. It's about the exercising of the muscle of shviras tavas achila in an extreme way to open up the channels. Says Reb Nassan, with this we can see absolute wonders in the words of Rabbi Seinu Zichron Livracha. Shedarshu al pasuk, who comment on the pasuk, and your lives shall be talui, shall be unstable, insecure. And Chazal darshan over there in the Gemara in Brachas, zehat toilet tfilav. This is a reference to someone who is toilet tfilav, who hangs up his tefillin, because chayacha we said already a number of times, Hashem Aleichem Yichyu, and its relationship to Pe'er, Tiferes, Yaakov Avinu Leimes, Chayim. It's a reference to Tefillin. But Gam Amru, but the Gemara Menashe Kuf Gimel, is that where you're up to? No, to Kuf Gimel, yeah. Right, so the Gemara Menashe says, Zeh HaKoyenim and HaPlaster. Oh, I'm sorry, HaPalter, because this is not talking about Tefillin. But it is a Gemara Menashe, interestingly. I know that everything in the Masechta is all connected anyway. Right, so Zeh HaKoyenim and HaPalter, this is someone who needs to go ahead because they don't have any ingredients, they don't have anything at home. They need to just go ahead and koyanim and apalter and purchase from the baker every day, right? Because they don't have. And receive from the soup kitchen. Meaning the baker sells him the leftovers at the end of the day for very cheap. It's a reference to poverty. As Zeshamarnu. Says Rabbi Nachman, with this you can understand why Chazal darshan these two seemingly totally divergent drushes on the same pasuk. Ma kesher b'neiam. Says the Rebbe, yeah, there's a huge kesher b'neiam. You know why? Ki elu ve'elu divrei likim chayim, and uses that word very specifically. Right, both of them are divrei likim, chayim. They're both referring to this aspect of the dynamic about chayim. Ushneim davar echad. They're literally both one. Because a person who treats tefillin disrespectfully, which is the aspect of a begam midas tefillin shumidas emes, azayu b'astar aspanim. So then he's in a state of astar aspanim, v'nismayat hashefa shalai, and then the shefa that's supposed to flow down into their life is going to be minimized. And then the mizonos is mitzumtzam, is constricted with tzarach liknes menapalter. And so these two drashas Chazal are really the same thing. It's a cause and effect. On account of a person who's toilet tefillah, memela, that's chas v'shalom going to lead to koyanim and apalter. Al king sival Eretz Yisrael, and that's why Eretz Yisrael, about Eretz Yisrael, it says again. This is an added element. Tamid eine Hashem elekecha ba. Eretz Yisrael is a land that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is constantly looking upon. Because the pasuk says, "Ki doiver shkarim lo yikan leneged einai." I'm just open pasuk. A person who speaks falsehoods, lo yikan leneged einai, will not be able to stand in front of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's gaze, which is einai. But Eretz Yisrael is constantly in a Kadosh Baruch Hu's gaze. What does that tell you about Eretz Yisrael? Eretz Yisrael is not a land of sheker. In other words, Eretz Yisrael is a land of emes. Ach, Eretz Yisrael she midas emes. Tamid Eine Hashem Lekachaba. Gewalt, Mevur. These are not like, like you have to kvetch. Like it's Mevur. The Rebbe lays out this tapestry, its majesty. Shoo. It's just emes. Just Torah's emes. So he says, V'hine, Kishat Tzadik Oichel L'Soiva Nafshe, when a Tzadik eats to sustain their soul alone, right, which is what the pasuk says, Tzadik Oichel L'Soiva Nafshe. Without any concern for tafnukim, like we learned, any extraneous pleasures, as then he's living with the aspect of Nisias Panim and Iza Mibidas HaEmes, and he's drawing energy from the trait of truth, from the trait of Emes. When a person with clean energy from clean food, clean eating, not bahamias, just neshama, he stands up and he praises and he sings Tashem with that life force. Then every word that comes out of his mouth is a word of authenticity. It's a word that's true. There's no blockage. He's clean. It's clear. He's open. And this is the aspect again of Yaakov Avinu, who's the Midah of Tiferes, which is the cluster and the klalius, the collective of the different colors, which is an aspect of Shemayim, Eishumayim, and that's the aspect of Tiferes. Kutchabrichu, Shemayim. Eishumayim is the klalius Hagvanim, red and blue, Chesed and Gvura. Eretz Yisrael, and therefore it is also going to be an aspect of Eretz Yisrael, which is Malchus Shechina Shashpa'asa Gam Kemimidas Yaakov, which gets its hashpa, of course, from the meat of Yaakov and is activated with that spiritual energy. Therefore, that's what it means. He has become a shutif with Hashem in creating Shamayim and Aretz. What's Shamayim? Midas Emes, Yaakov Avinu, Tiferes, Klal Yisrael, Eshamayim. What's Eretz? Eretz Yisrael, Malchus, Shechina. Shei mechinas emes b'dibur v'akdoshim, with his words and noyim v'yatzim imenu gam kim mechinas emes, which emerge from him in the aspect of truth, in the aspect of emes. Zeu shamar l'mala, and that's why we said earlier, ki Eretz Yisrael li ayala shlucha. Eretz Yisrael, we darshan on the pasuk ayala shlucha. Chazal darshan means a land that produces its produce very speedily and quickly and beautifully. V'hainu, but the words continue. The pasuk continues. Hanoisein imrei shafar, who puts forth words of splendor, which means Eretz Yisrael, a person who's drawing their life force from the energy of Eretz Yisrael, shlucha, which is the aspect of Ayala Shlucha, which Chazal says is a reference to Eretz Yisrael, shebechinas emes, which is the energy of truth. Azah, you know what happens then? Hanoisin imrei shefer kloimar shenesenes me'atzmo mikoicha imrei shafer. It will give a person words of halal and haidah. They're going to see their after bracha, their bracha achrayna, their benching is going to be with such chiyas. They're not weighed down and heavy and begusham and it's clean. They're clean. Yes, their nefesh got what it needed from the meal, and they're ready to go. They're not going to bed. They're going back to shul. They're going to learn. They're going right with life force, not to be weighed down so heavily. Lashon Tiferes, Imrei Shafer. It puts forth words of Shafer. Lashon Tiferes Shem Imrei Emes V'Alkein Yuchel Liver Shemayim V'Aretz, and is then able to rebuild Shemayim V'Aretz Shem Gam Kim Midas Emes, which again are also related to the energy of truth. V'Halav Namar, and about this person it says V'Leima L'Tzion, and to say to Tzion, again Tzion Daiko, which is Eretz Yisrael, which is the energy of Emes. Ami ata, you are my nation. Al tikri ami ela imi, which means ma'ana avdi shemaya ba'ara b'miluli. Afatem b'milula kanuskele el. About Eretz Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, just like I, says Hashem, who's chesamish HaKadosh Baruch Hu emes, creates heaven and earth b'miluli with my words. Afatem, when you're connected to Tzion, ini ata, you'll be my shutif, because you will channel down the midah of emes into your life, which is the bechina of Yaakov Shamayim, and you will then send forth Imrei Shafer, which is the bechina of Malchus, that's reflective of the energy of Kutsha Barichu, because Malchus is always associated with Dibur, and that's Aretz, and we become a partner with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in creating heaven and earth. If you speak true words, you can fix everything. You can fix all the channels. Kutsha Barichu Shchinte, activate everything, open up all the channels, and allow the light of Hashem to shine forth. V'zeh, and this is pshat in the pasuk v'leimer letzion. Hainu ayidei imrei emes shebechinas imrei tzion, through words of emes, which are words of tzion, imrei Eretz Yisrael, which are the utterances of Eretz Yisrael, shebechinas emes, which, like we said, is the energy of emes. Ayidei zeh ami ata, we become our Kodesh Baruch Hu's nation. But again, al tikri ami ela imi. So it's very meduyak over there, right? It has to do with tzion, because with tzion we have diburim of emes. Dibur of emes, okay, dibur is Eretz. Emes is Yisrael, right? Yaakov, right? Which is the Yichud, Kutsha Baruch Hu Shchinte. It's filling, and the energy of the Halal and Aidah of our Dibur being able to reflect that energy. Yeah.
The 28 letters of creation creates.
We're about to really get there. I think the Rebbe is maybe going to make reference to that. But yes.
Nothing takes away fighting. It's not Emes.
Yes, yes. Generally, the energy of Eretz Yisrael is what we've been speaking about. Yeah, and creating the 28 letters. That's right. And because we want to create heaven and earth anew, so then, and the tzaddik is able to do that, then yuchalasais moifsim b'shamayim v'aretz. Then certainly he becomes a bal moifis. Ki Hashem Yisbarach manig olam al pi derech hateva. Ordinarily, HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world through this thing called Teva, which is also a miracle, of course, but it's ordered, right? Teva, who al pi anhagas hagalgalim ki yadua. Teva is as a result of the anhag of the galgalim, right, which is the metaphysical component of the olam asiyah, which is the galgalim, right, which we've spoken about earlier, ki yadua, as is known in previous Torahs. The kivin sa'at tzadik yachal liver shemaim chadashim. I mean, this is just not to be believed. Remember, I just mentioned earlier that piece from the Ramak that I sent to that group that I just learned yesterday. If you wouldn't know, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mamish, like, the matrix is breaking down. It's not even close. Like, it was literally about this. It was about how a person using Kabbalah Masid could mention the name of one of the Oifanim and then and this was the mysterious words, can elevate it between heaven and earth. And it wasn't clear exactly what he meant. Like, is it a physical kamiyah? He throws it up between heaven and earth. What did he mean? Right? And then it's able to affect the galgal, that oifan, which is the malachim of the world of Asiya, is able to be mamuna alav, and then is able to bring about that thing that's happening. Like, we're reading about galgalim and shamayim va'aretz. I mean, unbelievable thing. This is going to impact the Galgalim, which I literally just learned yesterday. And this brings about a new teva, Shemayim va'aretz. Certainly, the tzaddik is able to do miracles, because he's recreating heaven and earth anew. Okay, here, let's go through this very quickly. Last 5 minutes. Okay, and this whole thing is a pele v'duk, and a person should really think about this really carefully. Now, go back to the beginning. And we began with a pasuk in Yol, which says, "V'achaltem achol v'savoya v'hilaltem." You shall eat and you shall be satiated and you shall praise Hashem. And then the pasuk continues, "Asher asa imachem lahafli," over all of the things that Hashem did with you, for you, lahafli, in a wondrous way. V'lo yevashu am elolam. That's how the pasuk says it. Now let's see how all of the different elements of the Torah that were unfolded in very, very different Mamar Chazal and Psukim that were totally diverse and unconnected before we came to this Torah, how literally it is all this pasuk. Let's read it together. V'achaltem achol v'savoya, kloimar, meaning to say, masha toichlu, whatever you ate, he ma'at ve'in arbe tizbu'u, right? Whether you eat a little bit or you're eating even a little bit more, every person adjusted, but tizbu, it should be for your satiation, meaning and it shouldn't be that a person is meshuka in taivas achila, which is meisaris, means they're eating more than they need. Then they're connected to the Yar Hashem Panav Elecha, and they're drawing forth from the tikkun of emes of the Yud Gimel Midas of Rachamim, which is associated with the Aras Panim. So ubukayach achila zu, and then the person takes the strength of this achila, v'hilaltem eshem Hashem alekechem, which is the bechina of hanoisin imrei shafer, on account of being connected to the energy of Eretz Yisrael. Naftali ayala shlucha, Naftali's tefillin ayala shlucha, and hanoisin imrei shafer. Then they're able to send forth words of praise. V'hilaltem eshem Hashem alekechem, as I tiu shutafim l'Hakadosh Baruch Hu liver shemayim. Then we learned the person becomes a partner with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in creating heaven and earth. V'zeu asher asa imachem, right? That Hashem has done with you. So al pi pshat, it just means the incredible wonders Hashem has done for you. But over here it's meduyak, because what do we learn about doing something with us? Leimer litzion Amiata, al tikri ami Elohimi, asher asa imachem. Dainu al tikri ami. The tzaddik who's mekusher to the energy of Yaakov Avinu. That's the midah tiferes. That's the energy of Yichud Kudsha B'Ruchu Shchinte. That's Shamayim and Eretz Chadashim. Memela is about Meifis. Memela imi ata, asher asa imachem, azay lahafli. Shetuch lasas neflois u'moifsim Hashemayim va'aretz. That person is able to do moifsim. And that's why the pasuk continues. Because we learned in Torah Lamed Ches, busha is the flip side of tefillin, because tefillin is klali hagvanim de kedusha. It's the bechin of Yaakov Avinu, who's the tiferes of Avraham, Yitzchak, the midas of the different kvanim. Busha was when a person's face changes colors, is an energy of the anti-tefillin, so to speak. Ki azal sumka va'asi chiv the gemara b'mitzia, a person's face turns red, then they turn pale. Upanim mishtana l'kama gvanim, and their face changes. Hu midas tiferes. That's really from the midas of tiferes. Mimidas tefillin. Mimidas rather hanefulim. Sorry, I saw the word quickly. Mimidas hanefulim, which is because of the word, because of the midah of tiferes that has fallen. So according to this, how beautiful are Chazal's words. When a person relies on other people, so then they're not living an authentic life, because then everything they do is to please other people. So memela, then their face changes, right? Why? Because the midah of tefillin, which is the klali sagvanim de kedusha, is the midah of emes. Memela, a person who's disconnected from emes means they're nitzrich lebrius. Of course, they're going to experience the midah of tiferes de klipa, which means to say their face is going to change colors, because it's the direct contrast to the midah of tefillin. That's what it means, that they're pogea on the midah of emes, and they're living with a hastaras panim, which is supposed to be the energy of truth. The collectivity of the colors. That's why that person's face is going to be changing into different colors, which is a reflection of the midah of tiferes. But on the negative side, because they they don't have the midah of tefillin. Mimidas hanefulin because everything is created in a system of contrast. And now the pasuk, you can read it in the most beautiful way. Right? That's the energy of emes, because a person's eating to be satiated, not more and not less, but not more. Then you can do awesome wonders. So then, of course, the pasuk continues, and you shall never experience busha, because you'll be connected to the tefillin, the kedusha, and you'll be in a state of emes. You won't have to go through the experience of sheker, which is nitzrich labrius, which pana mishtana kekrum. You don't need to be embarrassed. Right, which is the klalius hagvanim, the midah of tiferes, as it falls, which is in the parallel contrast to the midah of tiferes in a holy way. Al-kain, therefore, we finish up. And this is Pshat v'nasati Esev b'sadcha levemtecha v'yachalta v'zavatika mavur b'zara, like we said. Esev, like we said, hu av shin. That's the aspect of the shem ayin beis, which is the aspect of Tiferes, because the first pasuk is Chesed, the second pasuk is Yitzchak, the third pasuk is Yaakov, and so altogether it's the shem of Chesed, but it is ultimately the shem of Yaakov Avinu plus Rishon, and the shin has three different heads. That's shloisha avay shu agvanim v'hainu b'sadcha levemtecha shetesaded haba. When a person breaks their ba'amiyas, then then they'll eat and they'll be satisfied. So what will that cause? That itself will cause shefa. When a person breaks down their b'emtecha, because when asati esev, their life will be filled with their klalius hagvanim, with the shame of Yaakov Avinu, with the energy of emes, of tefillin, of Eretz Yisrael, of Ezu Ashir, Hasamech B'chalkai. Torah, Zayin. What an unbelievable privilege. What a privilege. Ashreinu mantay chatenu, pilei plain. Ashreinu. Chaydesh, Chaydesh, Chaydesh.
Ani haben, ואתה האב שלי, שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי. מלך חי וקיים, על כל נשימה שאני